I will be forever the myth.
You're the king of kings,
There's always a pecking order. The little packers never mess with the big packers. So I'm a rooster, and he's a chicken, so to speak.
All right, welcome back to another episode of the Bodybuilding Legends Podcast. I have my good friend Jerry Brainum here again with us today, and we brought Jerry back on the show to talk about the 2024 Mr. Olympia, which took place about 2 weeks ago in Las Vegas. This was the 60th Mr. Olympia, as the contest started in 1965. And Jerry, we just had you on the show a month or two ago, and we were talking about the history of Mr. Olympia, so I wanted to bring you back on and maybe go over what happened on the 2024 Olympia, even though we usually talk about the past. I thought we would talk about what happened currently in the Mr. Olympia this year. How are you doing?
Right. Okay, how are you, John?
I'm good.
Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too.
Good. How's your training?
It's
going all right?
Yeah, it's going good. I've been dieting for 4 months now. Doing some, I'm planning on doing some video shoots, like to promote my online coaching business.
Oh, okay.
I'm in really, really lean shape now. I'm just trying
Fantastic.
to lose that little last half an inch off my waist, which is like, man, it's just not coming off.
Oh, that's great. I know it's tough. It's listen, the older you get, for some reason, the harder it is to do it.
Yeah.
But you know, it'll come up if you keep doing it. You know. By the way, I saw. Don't ask me where. I saw you online. It was taking one of your, I guess, before you compete in the Natural Olympia or something like that.
Yeah.
It was a double arm shot. And, if I seriously, if I didn't know better, I'd almost think it was Photoshop. Because I'm telling you, John, your arm in that shot rivals any of the best pro bodybuilders I've ever seen. I mean, balance. And I'm not trying to kiss your ass. Seriously. I said, holy shit, I know John had good arms, but this is, I never had arms like that.
Wow.
I mean, your arms were spectacular.
I wonder what picture it was.
And what I mean by that is, I wish I should have maybe made a copy of it or something, but you had the forearm, bicep, it was all in perfect balance. And that's what really impressed me. The shape was good. See, a lot of the guys, you see a lot of the bodybuilders, including the guys in this year's Olympia, a lot of them have huge biceps and a little weak on the triceps, like Arnold. Arnold had gigantic biceps, but his triceps never really matched his biceps.
Yeah.
And then you look at a guy like Larry Scott, who actually won the first Mr. Olympia contest 60 years ago.
Yeah.
In 1965. What made his arm spectacular was he had perfect balance of the forearm, bicep, and tricep.
Yeah.
And when you say, what's the significance of that? Well, the significance is that when they're all in balance, it makes your arms look bigger than they really are.
Yeah,
That's the funny thing. I mean, if they're all in balance, your arms will actually look probably 2-3 inches bigger than they actually are.
Right.
That's it's great.
Yeah.
I just wanted to mention that.
Thank you.
I was going to send you. I was going to send you a note about it. I was very impressed. Holy shit, John! Wow.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah, you had. I mean, if they still gave out body part trophies.
Yeah.
You would win best arms in every contest. Seriously.
Yeah. Yeah, they were giving out when I first
wanted to mention.
Yeah, thank you. When I first started competing as a teenager, they did have body part trophies, but I was only like 16, so I was never up for anything, So if they would have had it a couple of years later when I was more developed, I could have won some,
Yeah. The funny thing is, when I first started competing in the mid 60s, also as a teenager, they did have body part awards, but for some reason, all the teenage contests I competed in got body part awards. I don't know why. The teenage shows, this is all on the East Coast, they didn't give out any body part awards. So I never was up for one. If they had, I think I would have been a candidate, but not so much arms, but maybe best chest. I had a great chest shot and best legs. Those are the two I'm not.
Yeah, good legs.
Other than that, my back, I never would have won best back or best arms or something like that.
Yeah. All right, Jerry. Well, let's talk about the Mr. Olympia. I was out there in Vegas a couple of weeks ago, and I got to see it. I was in the VIP section, but I was kind of sitting a little bit farther back. I wasn't like in the first couple rows. So sometimes I actually had to look at the video screen, because I wasn't close enough to see the details and stuff. But yeah, I was there, so I think I got a good impression of how the guys looked. Did you watch it on pay-per-view or did you just see the pictures online?
I watched. I didn't see the entire content online, but I saw quite a few videos.
Okay.
In fact, the videos were put on really fast. They were like about half they were posted like less than a day after the show.
Yeah.
So, I saw some prejudging videos and all that. Yeah, I did see that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Samson Dauda is the new Mr. Olympia. So he was third place last year, and he won the Arnold Classic already. But he didn't win it. He didn't win the Arnold Classic this year. He got beat by Hadi Choopin, and then Hadi was in second place, and then Derek Lunsford, who was last year's Mr. Olympia, was dropped down to third place. And then a new guy, Martin Fitzwater, his first Mr. Olympia, he took fourth place. And then that big, really big guy, Andrew Jacked, he took fifth place, which I think was the same place he got last year. So what did you think of Samson winning the contest?
Well, he seemed to be, from what I saw on leading guys, in other words, a lot of people were predicting that he'd win because he's such a big guy and he's got great shape. As you point out, he has almost like a little bit bigger. He's got a big man. He's got a small waist, got great taper, great lats.
Yeah.
He seems to have pretty good legs too. So I wasn't a bit surprised. But the problem with Samson in the past has been he's always had the size. It's always been peaking for contests, getting in the ultimate condition needed to win. This was Robbie Robinson's problem years ago.
Yeah.
And everything, but the show, and he'd be off, And finally, Samson obviously in enough shape to that being said, I still would not consider him in 100% contest. Remember, you were at the show. Maybe he looked different in person, but in the videos I saw where he could have been a little bit better conditioned. As a matter of fact, I ran into Jay Cutler at Gold's Gym only about 2 days after the show.
Okay.
I knew he was at Olympia, so I said, Jay, would you Olympia results? I said, did that guy Samson deserve to win? He says, yeah, he deserved to win. I said, you don't sound too enthusiastic. He said, didn't sound too enthusiastic. So I said, was there a problem with the guys, Jay? He says, I think a lot of them were off. They just weren't in maximum condition.
Yeah.
That's what he said. And I kind of noticed that. In other words, it's not that they look bad, but if you look at the conditioning of like I say, even the guys back in the 90s, they were like in 100% rip, most of them maximum condition.
Yeah.
And the problem is obvious. There's such an emphasis on muscle mass and size that it's very hard to get it together, John, where you have the maximum muscle size, which they think is needed to win, coupled with the maximum level of muscle definition. It's very difficult to get them both together. So usually you have to a little bit of one or the other to win the title. Samson, he had enough definition to win, and he obviously had enough size, but I think I wouldn't call him 100%. Let's say 90%. I would say he could have been a little bit hard, but as far as deserving, I think he to win. To me, a Mr. Olympia has to have all the body parts. Have a full back. You got to have hamstrings. You have to have calves. He seemed to have a head-to-toe body. He was symmetrical. He had that little waist. I think he deserved to win. There's no question about it in my mind. He was the winner this year.
Yeah, I agree. I think even last year when he got third, people were saying he's got the best body. He just doesn't have the definition, the condition that like Hadi or Derek did. Right. So this year, I think now actually it was a 2-day show. They do it Friday and Saturday. So Friday night when they did the prejudging, I actually thought he wasn't going to win. I had him in like second or third because I thought he was not cut enough. He was like in little water. But then by Saturday, to my eyes, what it looked like is not only did he look a little harder on Saturday, but he looked much fuller. He looked much bigger. And that fullness made him look more impressive, made him look harder. And I thought he dominated Saturday. I thought he put it away on Saturday. And I thought he deserved to win on Saturday.
That's the impression I got. But let me ask you a question, Jeff. From the videos I saw, since you were there, you saw the lineup. I mean, it seems to me like the bloated belly stuff is kind of rare now. I mean, did you notice any of the top 10 competitors who seem to have a little bloat going there in the midsection?
No, I haven't noticed that over the last few years. I think it's much improved. I mean, like when Derek won last year, he's got that great vacuum and he's got that great front double bicep, and Hadi too, really, really hard abs. He's got a good vacuum too. And Samson's got a small waist for a big guy like that. I mean, he's like almost 300 pounds. So he's got a small waist. So I think as big as these guys are, I don't see the bloated bellies anymore. I think if somebody does come in with a bloated belly, I think they're going to get way down. They're going to place way down because I don't think anybody has it anymore.
I agree, and it makes you wonder what's the difference. And I mean, why is it that the guys competing today, you don't see any bloated bellies, whereas was it 10, 15 years ago?
Yeah.
Phil Heath, he had a couple of, even the guys that won, like Phil, they had these abdominal bloat things. Now, Phil said it was a hernia. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt, whatever, But I mean, they must be doing something different. My guess, a lot of people, I've done videos and articles about what causes the bloated belly look in bodybuilding. And there's a lot of theories. And one of the theories that always got a kick, took in so much food that it gave them distended abs. Now, you see, the problem with that is that if you believe that, what you have to say is that all the food they're eating is not being digested. It's just sitting in their abdomen and that's completely unlikely because they'd have a whole bunch of, they'd have all kinds of abdominal pain. They would have constipation. They'd have medical problems. So I never accepted that, which leaves the other possibility. And the more likely possibility is it was certain drugs they were taking.
Yeah.
Now, I've seen in interviews with Dorian Yates, this is long after he competed, he was asked about the bloated belly look, and he says, I didn't have a bloated belly till, 96, something like that, 97. He said, I added insulin to my stack, to my drug stack, gave me a little bloated belly. So I'm only guessing. I have no proof or evidence of this. It could be that maybe the guys or the coaches or whatever kind of come to the realization that too much insulin, especially combined with carbohydrate, like a big localized water retention in the abdominal area.
Yeah.
And they've learned how to refine that. I'm not saying they're not taking any insulin, but they've probably timed better. That's what I'm trying to say. So they don't get the bloat on let's say the day of the prejudging of the con. This is only a supposition on my part. I don't know any of the guys to ask this. I don't know I'm just guessing, knowing the chemistry of insulin. That's all I'm saying,
Yeah.
But another thing I know. Does that make sense to you, John?
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I think that could be the only thing that would have changed, from what they were doing before.
Yeah. Another thing that's interesting is the age of the contestants. Like I said, I mean, when I covered the Olympia shows for Joe Weider for a couple of years, I was there, and the guys, the age range tended to be early 20s to early 30s.
Mm-hmm.
You very rarely had a guy over 35 competing. Kevin Liver, all those guys. Lee Haney was in his 20s. Today you have what's his name, Samson, 39 years of age, right?
Yeah.
William Bonat, 43 years of age, and quite a few of the other guys were in their late 30s or close to 40. Yeah. And this is a new trend in professional bodybuilding, where you get a bunch of older guys at the top of the heap of pro bodybuilding. And you might say, well, it's probably what we used to call muscle maturity. In other words, a lot of guys take a couple of years to get that, to fully refine the physique, where they have both the size and the right balance of definition, symmetry, and proportion. It takes them a couple of years to get that way. And sometimes it doesn't show up till their late 30s and early 40s. So that's an unusual trend I noticed too.
Yeah, I wonder if they're
You know.
starting it later, because we had so many guys before in the 80s and 90s who were great teenage champions, and they started in their teenage years competing and looking really good as a teenager. Lee Haney won Teenage Mr. America. Rich Gaspari was a good teenager. All those, Shawn Ray, he won Teenage Nationals. So I wonder if that's the reason why,
Yeah, well, when you start as a teenager, the maturity, look earlier. Where, let's say if you start competing as a teenager at 16, like Arnold did, you can get the muscle maturity as early, that kind of finished look, when he was about 23, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
From his teenage, he was a big guy, but he didn't have the really heavy definition that needed. But he modified his diet, his training, whatever. By the time he was 23, he had the muscle maturity, because remember, he was competing way back, as you said, as a teenager at 16. So what you're saying, I think, has validity. I think it makes sense. Whereas a lot of these guys, I don't know a lot of their backgrounds, the newer guys. So I don't know when they, I know that I did see pictures of Samson. Somebody posted a video of
I saw that too.
when he started. I mean, this guy was, I mentioned this too in the past, John. I pointed out how almost every champion bodybuilder almost always starts out, and you yourself are like ectomorph. Now they start out as thin, and Flex Wheeler was a pencil. He was so skinny, and they build muscle on top of they already have the great bone structure. All they got to do is pack on muscle. You know what I mean? They got the small waist, the small hips. And he's another example. He was very thin. He had no muscle. Then they had a picture of him where he looked like he might have been training a year or two. And you could already see, just like Phil, he already had the delts coming out. You could look at the picture, you know what I mean? And you could say, okay, this guy could be a good bodybuilder. He's got the structure, already has some muscle coming out. But you would never guess from that. Looks like he was maybe still a teenager in the second picture. You would never guess that physique would be the one that won the Mr. Olympia 2 weeks ago. I mean, that's a tremendous. He's put on a crap load of muscle, boy, I'll tell you. But I mean, he started out so skinny. It's amazing. You got to give him credit,
And it seems like these guys now, they get so big so fast. Like Samson, I remember Big Ramy was the same way. That new guy, Nextzilla, the Mascaro, Rafael Mascaro, that really guy with the huge legs. He was nothing a couple years ago. It only takes them like 5 years and they're monsters. It's so crazy how fast they grow.
Hey, speaking of Nextzilla, did he qualify for the Olympia? Do you know?
No. I think he only competed once or twice this year and he didn't place high. I think he competed once and he was out of shape. So he'll probably try to compete later this year before the year's over to try to qualify for next year, And
another notable guy who was missing was, again, I'm so bad on the names. Who's Nick Walker? Do I have the name right? Nick Walker?
Yeah, he dropped out like a week before.
He dropped out. Yeah, and didn't he drop out last year too, if I remember correctly?
Yeah, he had a hamstring injury last year, like a day or two before. And now, like a week before, he made a video with his coach and he said he wasn't ready, so they dropped out. He said his body just wasn't responding.
Now that's an interesting statement if you think about it for a second. How could a guy who's competed and won pro shows, has a coach, knows how to prepare, now is training for the biggest bodybuilding contest of all, just was it 2 weeks before, suddenly say he's not ready?
Yeah.
That suggests to me, and again, I don't know Nick Walker. There's things about him. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't really like the way he comes off in public. You know what I mean? He does things. He seems cocky to me. He seems a little arrogant. He might be a nice guy. I never met him.
Yeah.
So but I'm is a little bit on the arrogant side. But when a guy drops out 2 weeks before and says he doesn't feel that he's ready. Now I understand that philosophy, because Dorian Yates was famous for saying that the reason he retired, if you think back, the reason he retired after 6 Olympia wins, it wasn't because he was afraid of competitors like Ronnie Coleman or Kevin Levrone or Flex Wheeler. He retired because he had so many injuries. He had the tricep, the bicep, the lat. He felt that he could not compete in maximum condition anymore, and he refused to step on stage unless he felt he was at his very best. So I do understand that type of thinking. However, when a guy does this 2 weeks before, it makes me wonder if there was some sort of medical problem.
Yeah.
In other words, maybe he was not or had a bad response to the drugs. I mean, if he felt that he would be off if he did compete it, I understand that. I wouldn't criticize him for that. But it's just strange that I like him, who's already a seasoned pro competitor, who's won pro shows, and he has a coach, would think that he would know how to exactly peak and prepare for the Olympia where this wouldn't have happened. That's what I'm curious about. In other words, I think Nick Walker, maybe he should explain to people. Now, if he doesn't offer an explanation, the unsaid answer is that it probably was a drug reaction that he doesn't want to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
I understand that too. Why would he want to, that's not good. Well, I had a bad reaction to Trenbolone. He's not going to say that. I wouldn't expect him to.
Yeah.
But if he doesn't say anything, it makes you wonder, what is it that cost him 2 weeks before? And I saw him in a video right before that. You might have seen it. He's saying, I'm going to wipe out everybody. It was only, the video was like 3 weeks before.
Right.
He says, I'm going to wipe in the Olympia. I'm going to, then 2 weeks later, he's not competing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It makes you, I mean, I guess maybe we'll never know unless Nick Walker decides to explain what really happened. I don't know.
Well, in the video, it was him and his coach making, saying that he wasn't going to do it. And I guess since then he's dropped his coach, and there was like 3 or 4 other guys that also had the same coach, and they all dropped him. They all dropped him the same week, which was kind of weird.
Okay. All right. That's a partial answer to the question.
Yeah.
That tells me that the coach probably had him try something either new or change something that obviously didn't work well for Nick Walker and these other guys. And, and that explains Nick Walker felt that he couldn't, rip damage, so to speak, in time for the Olympia. So rather than enter, I mean, he's still a top competitor. He's a very massive guy. Don't get me wrong. He probably still would have made the top 6. But Nick Walker, again, I don't know the man personally, but he strikes me as the type of man that says, I'm not competing to get 5th place. I'm competing to win.
Right.
And if he felt he couldn't win, I'm out. I'm out of the contest.
Yeah.
That's what happened. Yeah.
Yeah. So the thing I was thinking about Nick Walker was, maybe it was his body is just so used to the drugs that, it wasn't responding anymore. That's the first thing I thought.
That's a possibility, but the thing with that is he's still a young guy. What, he's like 28 years old or something?
Yeah, I don't think so yet. Yeah.
But I mean, again, it depends on how much you're using.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're using a tremendous amount, they will be a point you get something called tachyphylaxis, where the drugs just don't produce the same results. Remember years ago, a couple of famous bodybuilder of the late 80s. If you remember a guy named Phil Hill.
Yeah.
Phil Hill. I was once in New York, Manhattan. I was in a restaurant. I was right across the street from the hotel. I was covering the night of used to be called the Night of the Champions. I think they call it the Dog Pro Show now. Yeah. And I went to get a sandwich or something, and who do I spot? But there's Phil Hill, and I knew him when he was a competitor. I interviewed him. He was a tremendous, massive guy.
Yeah.
And hey Phil, how you doing? We started talking. I said, hey Phil, what happened to you? I mean, you were doing great. I thought you were going to be like a top pro. What happened? He said, Jerry, the drugs just stopped working. I said, what do you mean? He says, well, between me and you, it wasn't working anymore. They didn't do anything for me. And I just dropped out. I stopped competing.
Yeah.
Well, how's your health? He said, well, I'm okay, but I'm not responsive to the drugs, so I retired. I never forgot that. And I heard a similar story from Robbie Robinson, another great bodybuilder.
Really?
It was a time when he also experienced where the drugs weren't doing the same thing for him anymore. I mean, they weren't producing the same results. It happens. Especially now, it's more likely to happen to these guys, who take two instances. If they take a lot of, let's say, a pharmacopoeia, many drugs, rather than just a couple of them, and if they take them all year round, if you take them all year round, some of these guys, I think we've talked about this. They call it cruising. Is that the term?
Yeah.
They think they get on lower amounts of steroids,
But they never get off.
Yeah, they never get off. They think that they avoid the letdown, the loss of muscle that occurs when you go. But they don't understand. They're not giving their body a chance to recover. Even taking low amounts, it still messes around with the way the body metabolizes the drugs. So eventually, when you go on to huge dosages, a lot of times they won't work as well because the body has kind of conditioned itself to resist the drugs as a protective device.
Yeah.
See that happens. So it is possible. If Nick Walker was looking at him, I would guess that he takes a lot of stuff. He's a very massive guy.
Yeah.
It might have been, but the fact that you mentioned that he dumped the coach and a couple other guys did, that tells me, I suspect it was something that the coach was advising him on that either backfired, messed him up, or whatever. And and he didn't want to embarrass himself by going to the Olympia, or not necessarily embarrass himself, but he felt that he wasn't good enough to win. So I'm skipping. I'm a young guy. I could come back next year, whatever.
Yeah.
So that's part of his thinking,
Yeah. The only one other thing about him, and then we'll go back to the contest, was what I noticed too was they didn't have any penalty for him dropping out. Where, if you go back to like 1990 or 89, like when Shawn Rhoden was supposed to do the first Arnold Classic in 1989, and he said he was working out and I think he was doing leg presses or something. He turned his head in the middle of the set, and then he got this sharp pain down his neck.
Yeah.
And then it was interfering with his training. And I think he had a month and a half to go. So he went to a chiropractor, and he got the medical, reason why he couldn't compete. And then he sent it to Wayne DeMilia, and Wayne DeMilia claims he never got it. And then they suspended him, and they suspended him for a whole year. He couldn't compete in the '89 Olympia. He couldn't compete again until 1990. So he lost a whole year of competition because of that.
Did he? Well, he must have signed a contract, or they couldn't do it unless he had a
I think that's the way it was back then, was when you signed a contract. But he had a medical excuse, and they didn't accept the medical excuse, and they still suspended him.
That wasn't right. That was unfair. That really, I mean, even with, like you say, even with a contract, if he had a legitimate medical reason, that should have been, they said, okay, it's fine, just recover and come back next year. That was wrong.
Yeah.
And there's a couple things that were just decisions made by the so-called governing bodies of bodybuilding that, I got to tell you, it disgusted me, turned my stomach.
Yeah.
The one that's down, I've mentioned this before, is the Shawn Rhoden situation. When he won the 2018 Olympia, and some woman came over, showed up and accused him of raping her and this and that, and they immediately, no trial, nothing. They banned him from bodybuilding. He lost all his contracts. I mean, he wasn't even given a chance to prove his innocence, if you want to call it, or anything like that. He was already considered guilty without having a trial.
And he was the reigning Mr. Olympia.
It's the reigning Mr. Olympia. I thought that was a disgusting miscarriage. It
was
horrible. Shawn Rhoden, well, he was aligned with the people that ran when I wrote this online, he kind of tried to defend he says, well, football play, it's not the same thing.
No.
And there are some people, I knew Shawn Rhoden. I personally liked him. I thought he was a very kind of quiet guy, really nice guy. I felt terrible when he died, but there's a lot of people that knew him a lot better than me, that including Sergio Oliva Jr., who've made statements that the heartbreak of him being banned from bodybuilding and losing all his income contributed to him dying of a heart attack at what, 43, 44 years age. I believe that's true. I believe that level of stress to do it.
What a tragic story. He wins the Mr. Olympia, gets to the highest level of sport, and then this girl comes and accuses him, and then her and her husband, they were found guilty of bank fraud years before that, so they're not the most believable people, And then, like you said, he gets suspended. He can't compete for years. And then and then COVID happened right around then. So then that's why the trial was delayed. And then I think they were finally going to have the trial coming up in a couple months. And then he dies of a heart attack. I mean, what a tragic ending, you know.
Terrible tragedy. And I believe he would have been acquitted for the reason you said, because, you know, this woman and her husband, as you correctly pointed out, I was shocked when I heard that. They were like con artists.
Yeah, they were.
Had a long list of criminal activity fraud. I mean, I have no doubt that she set up Shawn.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I've seen Shawn with really good-looking women. You know, he wouldn't have to rape a woman. That's bullshit.
Right.
And Shawn, he wasn't a drunk or a meth user that he'd go crazy on. I don't believe that story for 1 nanosecond.
Plus, they knew each other. She was like his client, I think.
Right. I think that she approached him because he, you know, and asked him to pay her some money. And you know, I think what happened was, I'm just guessing. Again, this is it's a theory. I think they had consensual sex, and then she and her husband decided to get some money out of Shawn Rhoden.
Yeah.
And they said to her, look, if you don't pay us 30, 40, 50, whatever it is, thousand, we're going to say that you raped her. And he said, no, I'm not going to pay because I didn't rape her. And I think that's what the true story.
Yeah, because I think it happened right after he won the title, like a month or two later.
That's right. It happened right after that. That's what I think. She was a con. Now, if she didn't have that background, then I would say, well, who knows what really happened?
Right.
And knowing Shawn, I had a lot of conversations. I kind of know the guy. He didn't strike me as that type of guy. He wasn't a rapist mentality.
Right.
Not at all.
Right.
He was a really nice guy. You know what I mean? You know, it's a shame.
It is. It's a terrible ending to his life.
Remember, John, when he won, that physique he had was kind of like resetting the standard.
Exactly. Right.
He wanted to beat Phil Heath because remember, Phil was as great as he was. He was going for his 8th Olympia.
He would have tied with Lee Haney and Ronnie Coleman.
Still had the bloat.
Yeah.
And here's Shawn, and Shawn did peak perfectly.
Right.
And that's an example of a bodybuilder in total 100% peak condition, small waist and abdominals. Really tough combination to have a tiny waist and thick abs. Sergio Bray was one of the only guys who had that look. Yeah. I mean, and you know, he won the title, had the beautiful shape, he had the symmetry, you know, and I remember saying at the time, oh, that's great. Now we're going back. Because everyone was complaining the bodies were getting too big and too bloated, and they had the bellies and this and that, and you know, turning off a bunch of. And here's Shawn Rhoden comes along with this kind of classic bodybuilding physique, and this fantastic new standard. Then the guy, you know, then it gets banned, and the whole thing goes right out the window.
Yeah. Big Rami wouldn't look for that.
Right. No, I shouldn't say that because what they did is. They established the classic division. Yeah. And those are the guys that have the physiques that harken back to the, you know, the guys years ago in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. You know, speaking, we could talk a little about, what's his name, Bumstead there, you know.
Yeah, I want to talk about that too. Yeah.
Go ahead, continue.
So Hadi Choopin was in second place. So Hadi won it 2 years ago, and then he was second last year. But he won the Arnold this year. And he was in really shredded condition when he won that Arnold. And he beat Samson. He actually beat him twice because he beat him at the Arnold. And then they had an Arnold UK in the United Kingdom. And he beat him there as well. So he was in second place. So to me, it looked like he was in great shape. I mean, I thought he's not as good from the back as he is from the front. He's got those really hard abs. And he's got that grainy ripped look with his abs and his chest, you know, that like Derek Lunsford doesn't have. So I thought he was in really good condition. Some people said that he wasn't quite as ripped as he was at the Arnold, but I mean, it's hard to repeat that kind of condition twice in 1 year, like 6 months apart, you know. I think his back, like I said, I don't think his back is as good as like Derek Lunsford's back. And what I noticed too was his legs were kind of weak from the back. His thighs are huge from the front, but from the back, I didn't see the size or the hamstrings, the calves. You know, he didn't have that kind of development from the back as much as he did from the front.
I agree with you. I noticed that too. He looks better from the front than the back. There's no question. It's not that his back is very bad, but compared to the way he looks from the front, it's a noticeable difference. And as far as his thighs, I noticed it too. In fact, I personally think if I were Hadi's coach, same thing I said about Big Ramey years ago, is that I would cut back on the thigh training.
Yeah.
Because I believe his thighs are just out of proportion to the rest of his body. They're just too big, especially for a guy his height, overshadowing his calves. He doesn't really have weak calves, but because of the gigantic thighs he has, his calves look relatively small. And and I mean, he should, if he's still doing heavy squats and all that, cut it back a little bit, do maybe higher reps. Lose about 2-3 inches on the thighs, and your symmetry will look a lot better. And concentrate on the hamstrings. Bring them up a little bit. Then he'd be almost unbeatable. In a situation. So I totally agree with the assessment you just gave.
I saw a video of him like a week before the contest squatting 6 plates on the Smith machine.
There you go. See what I'm saying? He's still going for. I mean,
a week out from the show.
A week before the show. I mean, it's obvious he's still going for muscle size on the left. Why? Why? His thighs are immense. Look at the pictures. Don't go by me. His thighs are. And he reminds me of Big Ramey. Big Ramey always had these gigantic. And the funny thing is, when he won the Olympia, if you think back, one of the changes he made, he actually reduced his thighs a little bit. A little bit. I mean, they're still big, but they weren't like the year before where they were just like 40-inch thighs. I mean, he reduced it a little bit. That actually helped him win the Olympia.
Yeah.
I mean, Hadi should take a lesson from Big Ramey.
Right. Right.
So that would be my advice to get off the damn 6 plate squat. Come on. What are you doing?
So now I heard they have the Arnold Classic coming up in March, and he's the defending champion. I guess he's not going in it. I heard a statement from what he said after the contest, and I think he might have thought that the judges preferred Samson this time because Samson's obviously, he's much bigger. He's a much bigger guy. So maybe he wants to work on more size, which is not the right way to go,
No, not the right way to go. If he keeps getting those thighs bigger and bigger, he's going to really get out of proportion, and Samson will beat him every time. You know what I mean? He has to take into account his height. He's like, I don't know, 5'5". He's too short to have 40-inch thighs. Come on, it's ridiculous. I mean, the only way around that, and I don't think he'd have to have like 24-inch calves. And it's not going to happen.
Right.
If I were him, honestly, I would actually, the only, I was going to make you laugh. The way I would train my thighs, if I were him, I would do leg extensions for the quads, and the rest of the leg workout would be all hamstring. I wouldn't even bother with leg exercises, squats, bring them down a little bit. Believe it or not, with his mass and size, even doing leg extensions will maintain enough muscle mass where he's not going to get skinny looking legs, but they will lose a little bit of mass, but that's what he wants. Yeah. Because it's hurting him. It's hurting. His symmetry is off. Yeah. But like I say, I totally agree with you. From the front, he's she's shredded. Yeah. He's just amazingly cut from the front. There's no question about that. I wonder how he's from. Is it Iraq or Iran? I can't remember.
Iran.
I remember years ago, Iran was. I don't know if it's still like that, but years ago, bodybuilders were greatly admired in Iran. I mean, they were treated like baseball stars here in the United States and football stars. I wonder if he gets that kind of treatment.
He does. I just saw a video online like a week ago when he went home, and they had it looked like 1,000 people screaming, like almost holding him up. It was crazy. It was an unbelievable reception.
I wonder if the government gives them little, like they do in Russia.
I wonder that too. Yeah.
I said years ago in Russia, if an athlete wins big and they give him a house or an apartment, a car, they give. They do that. They should do that. Yeah, they should. Instead, he's representing their country. He's a world famous guy. Yeah,
he doesn't seem to have any trouble getting over here to compete. Some of the guys who live in other countries, they can't get over here. So
yeah, I remember one year he did though. One year they were having a little trouble getting him over here, I think.
Yeah. Well, I think he tries to get over here early now. I think if he waits to the last minute, he has problems. But I think he tries to get over here like a few weeks before.
That's smart. That's smart. He learned by experience what he needs to do. That's smart.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about Derek Lunsford. Now, Derek, I know him. He lives right out here in Tampa, and he was the returning champion because he won last year, and then he drops down to third. Now, I thought Derek looked really good on Friday. I thought he might have a chance to repeat. I thought it was going to be between him and Hadi, actually. And then you know what? He just didn't have the impact that he's had over the last couple of years, and I couldn't understand why. And then I was talking to Chris Aceto, and he made a really good point. He said his legs were down in size, and his upper body got bigger. And then he also said he thinks his waist got a little wider. Now, he's still got a really good front double bicep. He's still got a really good vacuum. He's got those really wide flaring lats. But Chris said because his waist got wider and his legs were smaller, he didn't have that impact that he did the last couple of years where when he pulls his arms up and does a front double bicep, everybody goes, wow, look at that. And that made a lot of sense to me because I think if your waist gets wider, it's not going to have the impact anymore. And I think that's what went wrong with him, which was really surprising because he was posting a lot of videos, a lot of training videos in the gym, and his legs looked huge. I mean, he looked like he put on so much size. And then they had that big guest posing in May in Pittsburgh for Jim Mannion's show, and all the bodybuilders show up for that. And Chris Aceto told me that Derek's legs were so big in May, he said they looked like Tom Platt's. So how could he lose that size, especially like posting pictures, just a couple weeks before the Olympia in the gym, his legs looked huge, and now they just looked out of proportion. So they must have tried dieting him down too hard, and his legs must have flattened out, Yeah.
Well, a couple of things going to account for that. He might have, like you say, if he was trying to get the really ripped cut look, he might have overdieted a little bit. And, maybe he thought that maybe somebody might have told him after those appearances, hey, Derek, your legs maybe are a little bit too big. Maybe you should cut back. So a combination of extreme dieting and less training on the legs might have led to a little bit of muscle atrophy in the frontal thighs, whereas the upper body got a little bit bigger, emphasizing the smaller legs. So now he looked like he was out of balance.
Yeah.
His symmetry was off. So that's what I think led to the third place. He still had that amazing back shot.
His back was still the best, yeah.
And his deltoids in the back shot are immense.
Yeah.
I look at look at the size of that guy's delts.
Yeah.
Jeez. But I think that his symmetry was off, and that's what I think cost them to get third place.
Yeah.
I agree with that. Yeah.
Now, Derek, unlike some of these guys, is still a really young guy. I think he's still in his 20s, maybe 30, but he's not. I don't think he's any older than 30. So I was kind of surprised to see his physique regressing already at such a young age. Yeah. Unless it's something he can correct,
I think he could correct it, but you got to give the guy credit because, correct me if I'm wrong again on this, but wasn't he the first 212-pound Olympia champion who actually jumped into the open and won?
Yes.
That's that place in history. Nobody's done that.
Yeah.
That's an accomplishment in itself.
Yeah.
How many guys are able to do that? You know what I mean?
He also took second place in his first Open Mr. Olympia, which that's very rare too. If you go down the list of all 60 years, there's only a few people that have done that.
Yeah, well, that attests to his greatness as a bodybuilder. Because that's a rare feat to be able to do something like that.
Yeah.
As great as the 212 guys are, to be able to jump. There's been talk about guys doing this, but nobody ever actually did it until he did it.
Right.
He actually jumped in and like you say, he got second and then first. That's tremendous.
Yeah.
That's again very, very rare.
Yeah.
To do something. So, but I think he's young enough where he could make a couple of changes and come back. Whether he could win the Olympia again now, because these guys, again, you have these guys like Samson. They're going to be making hopefully some refinements and improvements. So it's going to be tough sledding for Derek, to win again.
Yeah.
I mean, I think he's good enough, unless something really bad happens. I think he's good enough to always make the top 5. But whether he could win again, that remains to be seen. I'm not sure about that.
Yeah. I think he had a lot of pressure on himself going in it, and he was very, very disappointed after he lost. And I think he was even implying that he was done. He was not going to compete anymore.
Oh, well, I didn't know that.
But I think that was just in the heat of the moment. I'm sure he didn't really mean that. I'm sure he'll come back. But
well, let's face it. If you're going in as the incumbent Mr. Olympia and expecting to win,
yeah,
and you're not only do you not get second, but you get third, I imagine it would be a tremendous disappointment.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I totally understand how he felt.
Yeah.
Totally. He must have trained his head off for the show.
One thing I want to mention too, Jerry, we talked about this earlier, was it seems like today the emphasis seems to be, they don't have a symmetry round anymore. They don't really judge posing anymore. We talked about that on the show before. But the emphasis seems to be, the improvement is get bigger, and then just come in super hard conditions, super shredded, but you got to make the improvement with the size. And I think that's how they judge their improvement, is on size. Now, if we go way back to the 70s and the 80s, I think the emphasis from the competitor's viewpoint, I think the emphasis was on a different thing. So I want to mention 2 guys. Frank Zane, when he won the first time in 1977, the year before that, he took second to Franco by 1 point. It was super close. And Franco beat him by 1 point, but Zane thought, assessing his own condition, he thought he was very ripped. And it was very, very good condition. And then the next year he came back, he was a couple pounds heavier, I think like 3 pounds bigger. He was like 185, and he won that year. He beat Robbie. And when he looked at the pictures, he thought, I'm not as ripped as I was the year before when I lost to Franco. So he thought, I could be better than this. So the next year in 1978, and I know this because I got all the magazines and I read all the reports, and they used to weigh those guys because they had the under 200, over 200 pound class. And Zane was 3 pounds lighter the second year he won. He was 182. And I was at that contest in Columbus, and I remember how shredded he was that year. Oh, my God. Because these guys were coming out one at a time, the under 200 pound class. When Zane came out, it was like he was at a whole nother level of rippedness, of conditioning. He was so more ripped than everybody. So I think, in other words, for him to improve, he thought, I got to be more ripped, not bigger. I got to be more ripped. And then the other guy I know was Lee Haney. Now, Lee Haney won in 84. I think he weighed like 243. He was like 13 pounds heavier than he was the year before when he got third. But the same thing, when Lee saw the pictures, and I read this in Muscle and Fitness, he said, my abdominals could be better. He thought his abs could be better. So when he competed in 85 and he won his second one, he also was 3 pounds lighter. So here's 2 guys who were Mr. Olympia. They were coming back to win their second Mr. Olympia, and they came in lighter because they wanted a better physique. They didn't think a better physique equated to more size.
Right. Well, that's because there's a couple of factors there. Is the judging was different back then.
Yeah.
In other words, size was always important in the Mr. Olympia contest. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But you have a guy like Zane, who was never the biggest guy, but he was super refined, as you noticed. I mean, he attained a level of conditioning that was the other guys just couldn't attain that, which put him over the top.
Yeah.
In other words, he couldn't get the size, so he went for the conditioning, and that's what those guys did back then. There was more of an emphasis on symmetry, conditioning, abdominal, definition, all that stuff.
Waist, the small waist.
Yeah. In other words, where the thinking was, okay, like Lee Haney, for example. All right, I'm going to drop a couple of pounds. I'm going to get sharper abs. I might lose a little size, but having sharper abs, when I stand there in the lineup, it's going to make me look much better, and hopefully will push me over the edge where I beat the other guys. Again, it's almost Arnold's philosophy if you think about it.
Mm-hmm.
He improved. He looked at himself, did a self-analysis, saw that he needed better abs, so he worked on that with the idea that having better abs would give him a win, and it worked. It worked. Whereas today, the whole thing is bigger and bigger. In other words, I want to get as big as possible to destroy the other guys like Nick Walker's philosophy. And, at the last 2 minutes or whatever, that's when I'll focus on refining enough where I don't look like a fat slob or a big bloated balloon on stage, enough to compete successfully, but I'll still have my size, and that's what's going to win. That's the current philosophy.
But you know what else impressed me about that was now it seems like everybody talks to the judges. What do the judges want me to do? What do the judges want me to do? It seemed like with Frank Zane and Lee Haney and even with Arnold, they didn't talk to the judges. They looked at themselves and they said, here's what I need to do to look better. And they both won. They didn't lose. They didn't go to the judges and say, oh my God, I lost. What do I need to do to win? They already won. And they said, I want to be better. I want to be improved. Here's what I think I need to do,
Exactly. And not only, but the problem with going to the judges is that bodybuilding is a lot of it is objective.
Yeah.
Rather, in other words, the judges will favor. Frank Zane even admitted this once.
Yeah.
When he was judging the contest, he mentioned that he voted the guy first place who had a physique that was kind of similar to his,
right?
Lean and cut. There was a guy who was like twice as big, but Zane voted for the leaner cut guy because that's what he could relate to. So when you go to the judges, I don't know what is 6, 8 judges, whatever there's on the panel.
9, yeah.
Each judge might have a different opinion.
Exactly right.
One judge might say, "Well, John, you got to improve your back. If you do that next year, you're going to win." And another judge will say, "John, everything looks good, but I think you need a little more size on the outer quad." I mean, you can walk away with all these. I mean, it can be very confusing. You know what I mean?
Right.
I think it's better to look at your own physique,
exactly.
or if you have enough trust in a so-called coach, let him assess your physique and tell you, here's what you need to do. I think that's what a lot of the guys do today. They let their coach dictate what they need to work on to win. That also is fraught with danger too.
Yes.
Because if the coach, as I pointed out, I did a recent article on bodybuilding coaches in my applied them. A lot of times the guys are just, there's no other way to put it, they're just full of crap. They don't know what the hell they're talking about.
Right.
I'm not saying they're all like that, but some of them are like that. But the biggest danger with the coaches is not so much that they don't have an eye for what a bodybuilder needs, whether it's a male or female. The danger with the coaches is the drug suggestions. That was the point of it. Some of the programs they give these people have led to death.
Yeah.
When the people forget about competing, they were one woman was waiting for a heart transplant. I'm not trying to make fun of her, but this is what can happen when you listen to bad advice.
Right.
That's the biggest. But I understand what you're saying. That it is better to kind of go by your own. At the end of the article, I said the best way to judge your physique is to be honest with yourself and look at yourself and be subjective and look at what you really need. Put your ego aside and work on that. You should. The best coach is yourself.
Yeah,
that was my point.
When you think about Chris Dickerson, he had Bill Pearl. He would ask Bill Pearl. Bill Pearl would tell him what he needed to work on. Guess
Bill Pearl was a little different because Bill Pearl, first of all, was a very, very seasoned bodybuilding competitor.
Yeah.
A guy who won 4 Miss Universe contests, a Mr. America, very knowledgeable about bodybuilding. This is a guy, and not only that, but I knew Bill Pearl pretty well. He was my childhood, my first bodybuilding idol. I spoke with him many times. He was an intelligent guy. He was smart. And not only that, but most importantly, he was blunt. Just like my friend Reg Park, both these guys were very blunt. They would not bullshit you.
Yeah.
If Reg Park or Bill Pearl was coaching you, they wouldn't hold back. They'd say, "Hey, John, your legs look like shit." They wouldn't couch it. They would tell you right off the bat. And it's better to be more honest with a competitor than to beat around the bush. Then you could screw the guy up.
Yeah.
So they're going to have a coach. They need one that has enough knowledge to guide them, and enough honesty not to hold anything back and tell them what they know.
Right.
That's what they need.
Let's go down the list again. We'll go to 4th place. This was a new guy. His name's Martin Fitzwater. Now,
Yeah.
Martin, he won a pro show this year in Detroit, and then he went in the New York Pro, which Nick Walker won, and he got second. And a lot of people, I wasn't at that show, but a lot of people said Martin could have won that show. I think Nick beat him by 1 point. So this is my first time seeing him, and I was very impressed with him. He's got really good symmetry. He's got a small waist. I think he could use a little bit more width. He had outstanding legs, some of the best legs in the contest. He was in peak condition. Really, I mean, if you look at all the guys in the show, he was definitely one of the guys that really hit his peak. He was full, he was ripped. And what I really liked about him, first time seeing him, was he was very hungry. You could see he's a young guy. He's in his 20s. I think he's 20. He might be 24. He might be like, or 27. Yeah, I think he's really young. Maybe 27. I'm not sure. But he's very hungry, and he really is excited about competing. He was excited every time he got called up for a comparison, which was really nice to see. You know, it was like, it's great to see this guy, young, hungry guy. So I think everybody was really impressed with this guy. I think he's going to do really, really well in the future.
Yeah, I mean, I saw that guy. So where did this guy come from? I mean, he came out of nowhere. And, you know, to place fourth in your first Mr. Olympia is again, a tremendous accomplishment. I mean, he beat a lot of guys that have been around for a couple of years. And you also have to look at the political side of it, John, is that no matter how good Marvin is the name Marvin Fitzwater? Is that it?
Martin Fitzwater.
Marvin or Martin?
Martin.
Okay, Martin. No matter how great he was, I'm going to give you a blunt statement. No matter how great he was, he wouldn't have won.
Yeah.
They're not going to let a guy who's never competed in the Olympia just walk in and beat everybody. It's not. He has to kind of pay his dues, so to speak. Mm-hmm. But just getting in the top 5 is an indication that he's set up where if he continues to, especially if he's 24, my God, he can make so much improvement at that age.
Yeah.
He's kind of set up, unless, God forbid, injuries or illness happens. He's set up where he's going to move up.
Yeah.
He might get second next year, and then he may win. One of these guys comes in off. Samson comes in bulky, too smooth. He can win with that conditioning. So, he definitely is very impressive physique. There's a shot I saw of him. I don't know whether it was Hadi or somebody. I can't remember. They were both being compared in a double arm bicep, and their physiques look so similar. They look like twins.
Yeah.
It was amazing similarity in that shot.
Yeah.
It might have been Hadi. I don't remember which bodybuilder, but he was being. They were comparing a double arm bicep. Very similar physiques, just same amount of. I mean, really close. Close, appearance between the two.
A lot of people were speculating that he could have beat Derek for third.
I totally understand that, but again, Derek's he's a Mr. Olympia when he's been around.
Yeah,
and they're not going to give him this new guy. I mean, there's no rational reason why he shouldn't be given the title if he's good enough to win.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. But that's just the way it works.
Yeah.
Just like I said many times in past interviews I've talked about, when Shawn Rhoden agrees with this, the incumbent Mr. Olympia factor, meaning that, but that no longer holds true.
That doesn't hold true no more, no.
Doesn't hold true anymore. In the past, a guy who's won the Olympia more than once, Lee Haney, Phil Heath, Arnold, they already had, even before the contest started, they already had like a 10-point lead, because they were the standard on which all the other guys are being judged.
Right.
So unless the incumbent Mr. Olympia went backwards, in other words, gotten worse shape than the year before, or if another guy noticeably improved, that Mr. Olympia who already won would win again. And that explains these, 6, 7, 8 Mr. Olympia titles. That's the reason why it happened. But because now there's really no, the difference was, the past guys, not only did they have the incumbency factor going for them, but they also had the dominance. In other words, Ronnie Coleman was so dominant, so big, that the other guys just couldn't catch up to him.
Right.
Now the difference now is now you have a more balanced field when nobody is really super dominant, where it's an open house.
Yeah.
Every year it can go any way. Just like like Derek won it last year, he got third this year. Samson won it this year. Will he win it the next year? Maybe, maybe not.
Right.
But, and there's no assurance that he will. That's the difference. He's not assured of the title. If he comes in, if he tries to get too big, he's going to lose. And I don't care how he is. If he comes in smooth, bulky, without the finish needed to win, and let's say a guy like Fitzwater or even Hadi or what, they will push him aside and beat him.
Yeah.
So
I mean, Hadi beat him twice 6 months ago, in the same year.
Exactly. I mean, it's tough for I sympathize with these guys. It's tough to have to, show improvement and maintain that kind of size and conditioning. Gee, I think about the strain on their systems and their body. It's mind-boggling.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult to. Things can like with what's his name we were just talking about, who dropped out. So bad on name. What's his name?
Nick Walker.
Things could go wrong so fast.
Yeah.
Like 2 weeks before something happened where he felt he had to try. And I don't think he's bullshit. I think that really happened.
Yeah.
But my point is, that's what you're dealing with at that level. Things can go south in a snap of a finger.
Yeah. Or an injury. Or
an injury, yeah. Well, you could look great. I've seen bodybuilders a week before, like Samir, my good friend Samir Banut. I've seen him a couple of years. This is not when he competed, because when he competed, I knew he was going to win a month before the show.
Yeah,
I knew him, what was training for. But at other times, I've seen him a week before. John, I'm telling you, look at the guy, and you'd say nobody's going to beat this guy. He was like diamond hard, ripped, shredded. That back was just incredible. I said, Samir, I don't see how anyone, and I wasn't lying. I don't see. And then the day of the show, he has a little water bloat. He loses.
Yeah.
He always said it was stress and aldosterone or whatever the case may be. My point is, he couldn't hold the peak.
Yeah.
And that was the week before. He looked like a sure winner, and then he looked like he'd be lucky to make the top 6. Just 6. So that's what these guys are dealing with.
Yeah. Yeah.